Hey everyone, so this is going to be number 6 on acceleration practice number 2. There is a slight typo here, and I'm going to fix that for us. So if you got a little bit confused, it's probably the typo. The problem should read, what was the velocity right before it hit the ground? It says acceleration, so that might have confused some people. So we're going to clarify that here. Let me read the whole problem for you as it should be. As you're reading along on your worksheet, just correct it right there at the end where it says acceleration. Should say velocity. Caitlin drops a ball off a high tower. If the acceleration toward the ground is negative 9.8 meters per second, and it took 3.52 seconds to reach the ground, what was the acceleration right before it hit the ground? That last acceleration should say velocity. All right, so we're going to use the acceleration equation. The reason I'm going to use that equation is because I have an acceleration, I have an initial velocity, and I have a time. My acceleration is negative 9.8 meters per second. This is the variables list. My initial velocity, if Caitlin's holding the ball off of the tower, then she's not moving the ball, right? Like if you're holding it over a tower, like you can see kind of my shadow here, if I'm holding the cap is not moving. So that's going to be an initial velocity of 0 meters per second. We're trying to find final velocity because, again, that last acceleration should say final velocity or velocity right before it hits the ground. So sorry again about that typo. And then time took 3.52 seconds. All right, so this is where it gets a little bit tricky because we have to find velocity final. Velocity final is smack dab in the middle of that complicated equation. So we're going to have to do some algebra in order to get that VF by itself. Now, if you are not an algebra kiddo, meaning you really struggle with the algebra part, manipulating an equation so that we can get a variable that we're missing, then that's why you have the equation card. So I'm going to work through the algebra down the screen here. But when we get to the end, if you're like, you know what, that's way too confusing for me, I just need to write down the equation. You can write down that equation at the end and I'll start for you so you know what you're looking at. But to get VF by itself, I first want to get this t out of the way, okay? So if we're dividing by t, the only way to get rid of that t is if we multiply t by both sides. Because in algebra, what we do to one side, we have to do to the other. So to get rid of this t, I'm going to multiply. But that means I have to multiply the t on this side. So this equation now becomes a times t equals VF minus VI. Okay? Now we want to get VF by itself, but it still has that minus VI right there. So to get rid of that VI, I have to add VI, because the opposite of subtracting something is adding. So what I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So this becomes AT plus VI equals VF. And that's my equation. Okay, so all I did was algebraically manipulate that, just like I would in algebra class, and I'm just making it a little cleaner here by flip-flopping it so that the VF comes first, but it's the same thing that we got right there. That is the equation. So if you're somebody who really struggles with the algebra, maybe you want to write this guy down here on your equation card. All right, let's plug in our numbers now. Now that we got the equation, VF equals AT plus VI. Running out of a little bit of room here, so as much as I want to write the units in the question, I'm going to abbreviate here because maybe I wrote maybe a little too big over on the left-hand side. So we have acceleration negative 9.8 meters per second, time of 3.52. And we're going to add that 0 meters per second on the end, which of course if we add 0, then of course it's, just itself, right? So we're just going to do the negative 9.8 times 3.52. Let me plug that into my calculator, Negative 9.8 times 3.52. You can do that on your calculator as well. And we got a velocity final of negative 34.5 meters per second, right? Because those are the units of velocity. Now, don't let that negative fool you. That negative just means we're going in the negative direction. And again, if I'm holding a ball on a tower and I let go of that ball, it's going to go in the negative or down direction, right? So you don't have to think to yourself, oh my gosh, is this going up, down, left, or right when you have an answer? Your calculator will tell you. The math worked out that it is a negative velocity because I'm already going in the negative direction. Okay? So don't worry about that. If your calculator says a negative, you put a negative right in front of that. That is our velocity final. Sorry for that typo. Head on over to number 7 if you need help with that second part.